How are you, Alex?
Hi, Matt.
How are you?
Fine. Do you hear me?
I can hear you. It's so nice to see you.
Same. Very.
The miracles of modern science, you know?
Yeah. Some positive aspects of technology. Yeah.
That's right. So, are you doing okay? The family is okay? Everything is good?
Yeah. Fortunately, it's difficult time in Italy now with coronavirus, especially some regions, and Piedmont is among the most difficult regions in this moment. There are three different colors for the alert, emergency alert, and we are the red color. So quite important, difficult moment, but fortunately at the family we are okay. In the winery we are okay, and so we are crossing fingers that the solution is found soon, because it's not easy. But anyway, life goes on, and we try to go on and to manage the situation.
Right.
And what about you there in San Francisco?
Yeah, very much the same. We've seen a little bit of a resurgence, and people are concerned. Of course, there are big questions in the restaurant business about indoor dining, outdoor dining, these kinds of questions. At Heirloom, we've decided, I worked very hard over the summer on perfecting a lovely little pan pizza.
Wow.
And we are working quite a bit with wine, and we're baking pizza 5 nights a week with some salad and some polenta and different things, different items that travel well, so that if people want to have food delivered, or if they want to come and pick up food, then we're able to do that. So that's what we've been focusing on. Yeah.
So you are happy, given the circumstances, you are happy with that. So you have.
We're doing good work, and we're making delicious food, and we are staying safe, and we are drinking very good wine, and that's that goes a long way. Those things go a long way, So
yeah, I think in this situation, especially if you are in lockdown, the time when arrives the time to eat and drink, so lunch or dinner time, is one of the few moments where you can really enjoy some nice things about life. So
I completely agree. Yeah. So I'm hoping there are 3 things that I want to ask you about. Do you have 15 minutes or so? 15 or 20 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There are 3 things I want to ask you about. 2 of them are the specific wines, and then the third thing is the question about modernism as it applies to Piedmont and specifically to Barolo.
Sorry, can you repeat? Sorry.
Sure.
The third?
It sometimes when we get into a conversation in the United States, and I'm sure in Piemonte also, there is a question about Barolo and modernism, more modern style winemaking, that maybe started with the De Grazia, importers in the United States, and barriques and all that sort of thing. So I'm hoping that we can just talk for a couple of minutes about that. But maybe we can start just by talking. So next Saturday we are going to present with a couple of old friends of mine who know Brovia very well and know the Langhe very well. We're going to be presenting the 2018 Brovia Freisa and the 2016 Barolo Normale.
Okay.
So maybe we can talk first about Freisa, and you can tell me a little bit about the grape and about your impressions of that wine, and tell me a little bit about Freisa.
Okay. Freisa is autochthon Piemontese variety. It's a variety that some studies, genetical studies of the grape made during the last years have shown every variety has two parents, like human beings, like animals, so some genetical studies have shown that one of the parents is Nebbiolo, and the other is still hasn't found what is the second parent of Freisa. So the first thing to know about Freisa is a variety that somehow comes from Nebbiolo variety, and it's a great variety that you can find in Astigiano, you can find close to Torino, you can find in Langa, but specifically I would say from Piedmont. And the wine is quite particular because it has some of the characteristics of Nebbiolo, especially if you look at the acids, at the freshness, if you look at the tannin, but it has as well some characteristics of what we call younger wine. So the fruity, especially the fruity aspect. So on the nose, I would say that it reminds more another younger variety from our area. I couldn't tell you why, because as well scientifically hasn't been still shown and or found. But on the palate, in the mouth, has many characteristics of the Nebbiolo. So this is from one side. That means as well that it gives you a lot of versatility in how to produce the Freisa. Because if you look at the flavors, at the fruity side of the grape, you can think about a younger wine. So to produce a wine to drink relatively young. And if you look at the structure, depending on how you produce the Freisa, you can produce a Freisa aiming for a mid-long aging. And in fact, Freisa production overall, Freisa is quite limited in Piedmont. So I would say Freisa is one of those varieties, usually I've seen during the last years, where you can understand if you are talking to someone that really has a deep knowledge about Piedmont, someone that with a really deep knowledge about Piedmont usually knows about the variety. Freisa, like, can know as well, it's different, but Pela Belga di Verduno. So this Freisa is big as a variety, as a denomination, but are those varieties that not everybody knows, but people with a deep knowledge about Piedmont knows. And that little small production, you can find Freisa that produce for drinking young, Freisa produce for long mid-aging, I wouldn't say long aging, and as well another characteristic of Freisa is one of the red varieties that tends to be sparkling in a natural way. So in fact, still some producers, they make a sparkling Freisa that you can make or dry or a little bit kind. So it's a not common variety, so quite limited in terms of production, but with a lot of versatility that you can produce in many different ways, because it has this we call a polyhedric, so it can have different personalities according to which kind of characteristics you want to focus on it.
And so what about the 2018, as far as everything that you just said, what about the 2018 Brovia Freisa? Where does that stack up as far as tannins or as far as longevity, ageability? What kind of a wine do you think that 2018 Brovia is?
Okay. Despite and no matter the vintage, we produce a still and dry Freisa.
Yes.
So no sparkling and dry Freisa. My father-in-law many years ago tried to produce, and he produced a sparkling, a little bit sparkling Freisa, done in a very natural way, because he stopped fermentation, still with a little bit of sugar degree, hoping that during summer or springtime, as soon as temperature went up, to provoke a natural fermentation, re-fermentation of the wine, producing some bubbles. So a little bit slightly sparkling, but that was made many years ago. And once, when the market for the Freisa was local, everything could be more or less kept under control. When we started to export, so everything was under control, and so you can find that some bottles were sparkling, some others not, and so we decided to make a dry and a still Freisa. So I would say that we make a Freisa. Our Freisa vines are in the Vilero vineyard. So you know, Vilero Cru is one of the most important vineyards for Barolo production, and so we naturally have there a quite deep Freisa with a nice tannin structure. What we make is we do not very long vinifications, but around 10 days, 2 weeks of vinification, in order to try to keep the depth on the, of the site and of the variety, but while not having a too tannic wine. So I would say that our Freisa is a perfect wine to drink, depending obviously on the vintage, between 2, 3 up to 5, 6 years from releasing. So it's not a wine for drinking very, very young, but neither for long aging.
My recollection of Brovia Freisa from past vintages is that it is a little bit lighter in color. It's a little bit more translucent. It has a vaguely kind of strawberry kind of color and aroma to it. Am I right about those things?
Yes. No, it's right. The strawberry, in fact, is one of the typical fruity flavors that you can find in Freisa.
The other question that occurs to me, and maybe this is the last question I'll ask about the Freisa, is if you have even a couple of rows of Freisa planted in Vilero, does the question, do people ask you who understand, who have a business sort of mindset, why would you not replant that with Nebbiolo that would then make Barolo Vilero?
But it's not logical having some. It's the lower part of the vineyard, yes. But anyway, could be a nice, could be good for Barolo. But the same happens in Serralunga d'Alba, close to. We produce another cru, Camilla, close to the Camilla plot. We have all Dolcetto vines. So we like as well not to take all the decisions according to economics, yes. But we enjoy making something for pleasure, everything, not yes. Something, everything for pleasure. So the
pleasure is a wonderful thing. So in both cases, with the Dolcetto in the Brea vineyard, and yes. And the Freisa in the Vilero vineyard, are they both lower on the slope? Is that right?
In the Vilero vineyard, the Freisa is lower on the slope, but you can consider that we have aside our neighbors, they have Nebbiolo, so it could be Nebbiolo for Barolo. But my father-in-law, he planted those rows in the 90s. Yes. So we are quite traditional producers, and so it's a traditional grape. He didn't have many experience with Freisa, and he wanted just to add some Freisa. In the end, the production is very, very limited. We produce in bottles 700 bottles, 1,000 bottles, so less than 100 cases. It's a tiny production. And the Freisa. And in the case of Dolcetto in Serralunga, our vineyard is just aside. It's not lower in height. So we have in Serralunga d'Alba all the vineyards that are even of Nebbiolo for Barolo, wonderful vineyards, even a lower position. So it's not that it's lower like in Vilero. In Vilero, Freisa is lower compared to our group. In Serralunga, we have some Nebbiolo plots that are same height or even lower height. So there's not such a difference of height in Serralunga.
No. All right. So while we're there talking about traditional, you used the word, you said that Brovia is a traditional winery.
Yes.
Tell me what it means to make traditional Barolo versus some of the choices that are made in Piemonte that are a little bit more modern in Barolo.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the word traditional today is different, has a different meaning to the word or to the use of that word in the 80s or in the 90s. So 80s and 90s, there was a very big opposition among two groups of producers in the way they produce the wines, in their philosophy about how to make the wines and what to achieve with the wines that they made. And so, in fact, in the 80s and 90s, still beginning of 2000, traditional producers were making long vinifications, especially it was long vinifications and aging the Barolos in big barrels, big casks.
Big barrels. And the long vinifications and big barrels produced wines that were not necessarily very, very friendly and charming when they were very young. Is that right?
Yes, I think that was what people believe at the moment, because I have to say that Barolos made in that way can be as well quite approachable in a younger moment. Obviously, Barolo is a wine that needs to age, and it's impossible that a Barolo achieves its peak moment, a big moment of pleasure and roundness and harmony the year they are released. So because it could be something strange, so because of the characteristics of the grape. But people thought that those Barolos were more difficult in the very beginning. But I don't think that it's true, because you can produce Barolos with Barrique, and I have to say, me personally, I prefer the tannin coming from the grape. If the grape is mature, is coming from wonderful positions. So when you have a nobile, a round and sweet tannin, can be big, and maybe it may need some time to melt on the wine. But I think can be easier, that kind for me at least personally, that a tannin coming from younger vines, from not very good positions, and coming from the tannin from the oak, from the barrique. So I think that's very personal, very subjective. What it is true is that at that moment, 80s or 90s, if you look at the kind of wines that were more popular in the market, in the international market, they were more fruit. They were fruitier. They were darker, and they were a little bit sweeter. And so I think that and maybe a little bit less tannin, but again, and the Barolo is a tannic wine. So they tried to, those wineries tried to change completely the way Barolo was been making. And again, the two big, they were all the changes, but the most important ones were shortening the vinifications and aging the wines in barrique. But that was in the 80s, in the 90s. I think at that moment, Barolo was not so well known in the international market, and some journalists discover Barolos or approach or found in those, let's say, more modern Barolos wines that they like, and so the knowledge and the market for Barolo internationally grew in a very important way. I think in those years, because of those modern, more revolutionary in that moment Barolos. Then through the years, I think the knowledge of the people about Barolo has been increasing, and the palate of the people as well to know and understand and enjoy Barolo has changed through the years. And in fact, I think it's now more than 30 years that a bigger number of wine lovers have discovered or have approached to let's say more traditional Barolos and enjoying as well those Barolos. So, and I would say that in this moment already from the last years, it's not that you are modern or traditional. It's not like in the 80s it's black or white. It's many gray in the middle. Even modern producers, I think modern producers that produce the Barolos like they used to produce in the 80s exactly in the same way are very, very few, as well as some traditional producers have changed a little bit as well the way they work. I think now more is there's a bigger knowledge of how to achieve the kind of wine you like. And in our case, it's more not as much modern or traditional, but trying to keep the personality of the grapes, the personality and the characteristics of our soils and our vineyards. So this balance, this interaction between grape and terroir, for us, that is the most important thing. And in our case, we try to achieve that balance and that expression through what can be considered a more traditional approach. So long macerations, they are not the kind of macerations that were made in the 50s or in the 60s that maybe you had the wines with the skins in contact with the skins until end of November or December. So it's 3 to 4 weeks. We are doing a little bit more pumping overs, but in a very soft, delicate way, in order to have a very, very complete extraction, but keeping the elegance and keeping a very soft tannin. So without stressing too much the cup and without charging too much of tannin the wines. So, and then aging in big barrels. So that didn't change. We don't filter the wine. So, and if we talk about our crus, they are meeting exactly the same way. So our aim is to try to keep that personality in the wines.
So thank you. The 2016 Barolo vintage.
Yes.
This is a vintage that you think needs between the Normale wine that we are going to taste with our guests next week, and the Cru wines also. This is a vintage that is a very good candidate for aging a little bit or a lot. Or tell me about 2016.
2016 has been a really extraordinary vintage. So during the last years, I think 16 is if you have to, since year 2000, since the 2000 vintage, 16 can be considered among the vintages at the very, very top level. Since 2010, I think 2010, 2000, up to now, during the last release vintages, 2010, 2013, and 2016, I think are the best ones. It's difficult as well to say the best ones. So if you look at the depth of what you consider a very classical vintage, because I love vintages like 15, like 11s. If you look at the harmony, if you look at the elegance of the wines, but if you look at the depth of the wines, if you look at the capacity, possibility, potential of aging of the wines, I think 16 is one of those vintages where you can really age the wines and achieve extraordinary levels. But in the same way, compared, for instance, to 2010 that I mentioned before, that is an extraordinary vintage, the 16s are a little bit more approachable in a relatively younger stage. So they have a fruit component. For instance, the fruit component of the 16, I think, is quite nice. It's a little bit, in my opinion, I'm talking about our wines, it's a little bit higher, and the fruit component of the 16 compared to other important vintages like 2010 and 2013. And it makes since you have that fruit component, the wines are quite rich and deep. I think can be enjoyed in a relatively, you can start to enjoy in a relatively younger stage compared to other very important vintages. But it's a vintage that you shouldn't have any problem to keep for 15, 20 or more years. If you, obviously with the wines, we are making predictions, we are making forecasts, yes, but then time will tell. So some vintages, maybe you think that it's better to drink relatively young, and after 15 or 20 years, they surprise you. But obviously, for what we see in this moment and for what we know because of the evolution of the wines up to now, I think 16 you have a very good capacity to age. But I think it's a vintage that in 3, 4, 5 years from now you can start to really enjoy.
Yeah. Where is the Brovia Barolo Normale, the village Barolo? Where is that fruit sourced from?
Okay,
where's it come?
It's a blend of our different crus, 70 to 80%. So we have our 4 crus. For people that they don't know about our 4 crus, we have 3 crus in Castiglione Falletto, Roque di Castiglione, Vilero, and Garbret Sue. And we have 1 cru in Serralunga d'Albes called Brea, from where we produce the Brea Vigna Camilla, which is our cru from Serralunga. In Serralunga, we have most of our vineyard in terms of size, of surface. So around 70 to 80% of the Barolo Brovia, of the cuvée, the blend, is coming from Serralunga, from the Brea vineyard, from vines that are around 25 to 30 years old vines. So they are not young vines in the Barolo Brovia. We have younger vines, but the wine coming from the Barolo coming from younger vines, we don't put in bottle. So there is already a very high selection with the grapes for the Brovia. And the remaining 20 to 30% of the Brovia is the leftovers of the crus. Mm-hmm. So exactly the Roque, exactly the Vilero, the Garbret Sue, and Brea Vigna Camilla, when we fill 1 barrel per cru, we have some leftovers. Those leftovers, then they finish in the Barolo Brovia. So the Barolo Brovia, it's many people call classic or basic, but it's already a very, according to us, and we try to make it as a very nice, high quality Barolo with already a very nice, sharp selection of positions and vines and grapes.
I was about to say, it sounds like a very good value to me.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, right. Well, I have one last question for you, because this is something that came up between an associate of mine. We had a conversation about this a week ago. The story of the 2014 Unio, Barolo Unio,
yes.
Which is so. Maybe I will tell the story very quickly, and you can tell me just a little bit about the wine.
Sorry, I lost the connection.
2014. Oh, okay. I was just saying I was just saying that my friend Chris will be eager to hear what you have to say about the Unio. But roughly, the story is that the vintage was a very challenging vintage. It was a little bit cool. It was, I think, a little bit rainy. And as such, you decided not to make any of the single cru Baroli that year, and you made just one wine, which was called Unio, and it was a blend of the four crus, I think. Am I right about that? No?
You were right until the last moment.
Okay. All right. So why don't you correct me and tell me about the Unio? It's a wine that we continue to be very intrigued by.
Okay. So Unio is a label, a wine, a Barolo that we only produce in the vintage 2014. And as you said, the vintage was very challenging. Many rains, some hails, some diseases, cool temperatures during summer, and so it was really difficult vintage to deal in the vineyard. Fortunately, end of the season, the temperatures and the weather improved. And so that was good for, especially for varieties like Nebbiolo, where varieties that you harvest later, and so you have some good weeks before the harvest. You can improve the results, and you can finish with a nice maturation of the grapes. The thing is that so we made the harvest, we vinified and aged all the crus and all the wines like we do separately. But according to us, when we every time we tasted the wines, when we followed the wines closely, and when it arrived the moment where we had to think about the bottling and to prepare the wines for the bottling, we recognized that we were not convinced 100% about all the crus. So according to our opinion, we had some barrels with extraordinary level. And if we talk specifically about the crus, two of the crus, according to us, were at the level we require for a cru. Two of the crus were at a very nice level, but not the level that we require, and not the level that we would have left us absolutely satisfied and convinced about the crus. So we had to make a decision. That was one decision was could be let's put in bottle the two crus as crus, and then let's produce a Barolo Brovia with a nice level. And the second decision, which is the second alternative, which is the one we chose, is let's forget about the crus. Let's try to make the best possible Barolo from that vintage. And so we decided the second one for different things, for different reasons. One of the reasons is that for us, the four crus are like four zones. So we didn't like to say, okay, in this vintage, two zones they had a good score, and two zones were failed in the results. So, and we didn't want to make that someone could think that those two crus perform better in difficult conditions, because it was not like that. If you had a hail, if you had a little bit more disease or whatever, so it's not that the cru that from which we didn't have that excellent result was a lower cru in terms of quality. It's because the vintage, really the season one was
right. Yeah.
So anyway, that's why the two main reasons for which we decided to concentrate on making just one wine, and to achieve the kind of quality, the level of quality we look in the crus, but not with a cru, but with a blend. In the end, it was what we made. And by the way, so we made, it was different weeks making testings, blind testings, with many different combinations of tanks, of barrels, percentages, and so with many different alternatives. And in the way we ended up using a selected part of the Brea vineyard in Serralunga, plus two of the cruise, and were the two cruise that we retained from the very beginning, that were the better, the ones that really perform much better in that vintage.
Yes.
So it's not a blend of the four cruise. In fact, there are only two of the cruise in the Union.
Yes. And what's have you tasted the wine recently?
No, last time I think it was 6 or 9 months ago.
Yeah, I was very impressed by it. I think it's a very delicious wine, and I think it has a slightly different personality. It has a very savory personality, you know, and I think it's going to also likely to live a nice life ahead of it. You know,
I think every time I have tasted it, I think it's I've been very glad about it, and every time I taste it, I'm really glad about the decision we made.
Yeah.
And I think it's a wine. The difficult thing of the wine is the vintage, I think, because the wine itself, I think the quality is top. As you say, it's very savory. It has a great balance, and the freshness of that vintage is fantastic. And I think in the future, as you said, I think it has still a lot of life in front of it. Not that much because of the tannin, because the tannin is there. It's very soft, I think, very well integrated,
yes.
But it has a freshness. And it's something really unique from that vintage. So usually Barolo has a very nice freshness, but the one in 2014, I think it's higher compared to other vintages, but in that wine fits perfectly. So
right. Wonderful. Well, listen, we have gone way over the 20 minutes that I mentioned at the beginning, the 15 or 20 minutes. I cannot thank you enough for taking these few minutes with me. It's very, very nice of you. I appreciate it. It's
been really a pleasure, and I'm very glad to see you, to make this interview. And I take profit of that to give the very best regards to you and to all your guests and to everyone there.
Thank you so much, Alex. We'll look forward to seeing you in Italy, you know, before too much longer. And you should know that you are always welcome in San Francisco. If you know, if the plane, the tickets are reasonable, you can show up at our door anytime. We'll be very, very happy to see you.
You're very kind. I hope to see you too soon. No matter if in Italy or in the US, in San Francisco. Anyways, it will be perfect. It will be great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of you. Thank you very much.
Take good care.
The same. Ciao, ciao, man.
Ciao.
Ciao.